Hi, this is the Triheart podcast with Biff LeCup. This is episode 11 with Corey Jones, who is the political director of BLM Rhode Island PAC, with featured music by Vault Kid. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and BLM Rhode Island PAC?
Yeah, so BLM RI PAC formed by a group of young people who kind of saw this, older young divide happening in the community. And we wanted to be the bridge by creating our own platform that would be able to engage in, political advocacy and lobbying, essentially, to a level that, a lot of nonprofits in this area, they're well established and, they're doing the good work, but, they're just structurally not equipped to, get candidates elected. So we decided to create an organization that would work on, this progressive national, idea that the Black Lives Matter movement has created, this intersectional movement that all issues are interconnected. And if we want justice, racial justice, we have to get justice, so we want to fight for environmental justice, educational justice, housing justice, and, take a bold progressive stance on all those issues. So that's kind of, where we came from and the fight that we're in.
So before we get into the PAC, can you kind of help me navigate BLM, the philosophy, BLM, the organization, and then BLM, the PAC?
Yeah, absolutely. So BLM, the philosophy, I would say, is the one the national organization has created. The founder has said that she believes that this is a decentralized movement, and she wanted to create a platform that would create decentralized leaders in their communities where they would be able to, use this framework. And, because when creating this, we knew that BLM RI PAC would not be able to be a part of the national organization because they're a nonprofit and we're a PAC, and that's inherently, against the rules of a nonprofit. But when we read that, she supported these decentralized organizations rising, but just asked, where's the money going, and asked for transparency. We thought a PAC would be the perfect opportunity because, a PAC, all of our contributions are public, and we file with the Board of Elections, and we also, for our Fed PAC, we file with the FEC. So BLM RI PAC is really two board members, me and Joyce, for now. And so far, I think we have about 12 advisory committee members. The advisory committee is really the body of the PAC. They're really the vessel that guides us in endorsements and how we allocate our resources. And we are trying to make the advisory committee be a broad coalition of people from different movements, different organizations. Today we had the RI Tenant Network sit inside of our advisory meeting to see if they think that, some of their allies and members would be a good fit in this advisory committee. But we want to invite everyone from, community leaders that have been around for a long time to young people who are rising in the scene, all the way to, surrogates from different organizations. And that's really, the body of BLM RI PAC.
A lot of chiptune concerts this summer have been fundraising and donating to BLM organizations. So if we make contributions to the BLM RIPAC, what do you do with that money? How does that function?
Yeah, so right now we have invested our small donations to shirts, which we'll be reselling for more money, of course, and then we'll be using that money. About 70% of it will go directly to candidates or directly to voter contact. So right now we have, 2 weeks of the primaries, and we've endorsed 6 candidates, and 4 of them are running in pretty contentious races. Right now, the advisory committee is actually meeting this moment as we consider some more endorsements. So we're hoping that in the next 2 weeks, we can raise, as much money as possible, sell as many shirts as possible, and then give that money directly to these candidates to try to create an upset in these, races that we think are contentious, and, we think the candidates are well equipped. So after the primaries, when we go into the legislative session, we will be spending, 70 to 80% of our funding solely on issue advocacy. We want to focus on the education system. I don't know if you know about the Providence Public Schools, but the state the Rhode Island Department of Education just took over the Providence Public Schools. When the Johns Hopkins reports came out in 2019, it was some of the worst conditions that, public schools in the entire country are facing. And then the racial disparity, they have 96% of students of color, but 86% of the teachers are white. And that's not because there's a shortage of teachers applying. There is, but there's a line of teachers of color that are waiting to get in. But, the teacher union has a rule that basically makes it so if they get in a disciplinary problem or have disciplinary action in one public school, they can just go to the next one. And basically you have these, teachers that shouldn't be teaching because of their behavior, just floating around from one school to another school. And it's kind of strong arming these young Black candidates that the state has actually made, different adjustments to allow and increase recruitment. So we're, of course, pro-union, but we want to work with the teacher union to, have some negotiations to change some of this. We want to work to raise awareness. And if we have to, we will go into the legislative session and try to get a bill passed to actually make this change. So we are asking senators and House representatives to actually sign our pledge for education. I sent out an email to all of them. A couple have replied, but we will be making phone calls to all House representatives. We will be making phone calls to all senators. We will be showing up to legislative sessions in numbers, and we will be disrupting until we have our demands met. So that's where a lot of the funds will be going after the primaries.
I heard you use the word activated in one of your speeches I saw. So like, how did you become activated
Yeah.
to where you are now?
Yeah. So I have a couple stories. I'll start off with this is the story that I haven't really shared a lot, but it really was the, preliminary stages of my activism, because I used the word activated, but I also kind of had, a built up point and then an activated point. And my build up point was at a young age. I come from a family, my brother is the only one to get a degree in my family. And I'm 4 credits away from being the second one. But so we didn't always get, a box of candy or, a desirable good we wanted. And me and my friends thought it was a good idea to steal. So I went to the store and I went to go steal a box of hot tamales and Twizzlers. And, I lived in a very small town. So when the lady caught me stealing, I kind of threw it and I jumped on my bike. I left it behind and I just rode home as fast as possible. And I went through the bag, thinking I was sneaky. And I came into the living room and my
Oh
mom was
no.
sitting down
Oh
with
no.
juvenile, police officer Amy Ford. And I was terrified. I kind of like jumped when I saw it. But the lifestyle that we kind of grew up from, because my family originated from Chicago, and at about 8 we moved to Iowa, and we never would imagine a police officer sitting in the living room. When the police entered your house, it was abuse. It was not for discussion. They had an objective. They did it and they got out. So Amy Ford actually showed me a slideshow of, this is where you'll end up. This is what life will end up like for
There in your
you.
living room?
This
That's
is the
crazy.
route you're gonna
Wow.
take. Yeah, and so it really scared me straight. And she said, I know, Miss Coleman, you'll be able to handle it from here. And she's like, me and your mom talked, and I think she's gonna be able to handle it from here. And that was kind of a wake-up call, not because of that moment. That moment steered me out of trouble, but when I went back, because every weekend I would go to, the city, I would go to Cedar Rapids, which is about 20, 30 minutes away, and hang out with my cousins, because, there was a level of familiarity, and I felt like, I was getting away from the racism. And when I told my cousin the story, their jaw dropped. They were like, they didn't start looking for drugs. They didn't, because my brother had, was an avid smoker at the time, and everyone in the town knew it. They're like, they didn't go for your brother. They didn't, bring in drug dogs. And I was like, that's absurd. Like, why would you think that my interaction was like that? And he was like, well, when my friend Quan got into it with the police, they went to his house too because he stole, but they did a no-knock raid. And, they scared his mom and his dad, and then, they end up beating them with batons. And, later my cousin ended up in a similar situation where, they did a no-knock raid, scared my uncle, and then, beat him just because he kind of ran out of the room quickly. So it showed me that, these two environments were, drastically different. And later, some years later, as a kid, I kind of, battled the idea, was I chosen, or, why did I get this privilege, and, that, everyone else didn't get. And it was conflicting because I felt, a weight of my entire community on my shoulders. Like I was chosen to, carry this weight and show that, this is the differences.
Wow.
This is what happens when you have a police that knows their community, right? And not necessarily because, small town police are better police. That was the culture. Everyone knows everybody. Everyone knows everyone's business. And, the police, made an effort to talk to everyone, maybe just out of being nosy, but they created that relationship. And I kind of took that to heart. And so now, it's kind of my example of what defunding the police mean. So when I talked to the officer some years later, told her, the significance it had on my life and the impact, I come to find out that she was actually disciplined for that moment.
No way.
And she later, resigned and sued the police officer for sexual harassment. So when we talk about abuse and, you know, sexual abuse and, you know, all cops are bad cops, you know, I think that story is a modern day reflection on, you know, what these people are screaming out has some merit, because, you know, she tried to be a good cop in a bad system, and, you know, she was treated with abuse, with sexual abuse. They didn't give her new equipment. She was wearing expired vests when everyone else got new equipment.
Wow.
You know, so the treatment, and she ended up suing them. They ended up settling for $775,000, if I'm correct, city of Anamosa, Iowa. So, you know, when I look back and reflect, I realize that, you know, my story is intertwined and, you know, a lot of other people's stories. And I was giving a ability to, you know, give a voice to the voiceless. So that kind of is, you know, what was the built up. But when I got activated was 2016. I became a national delegate for Bernie Sanders at the Democratic National Convention. And, you know, I was a senior in high school at the time, but
Wow.
that kind of brought my passion from, you know, just a feeling in, you know, of right and wrong and knowing that things were wrong, to a ability to manifest, you know, real change and be able to work, you know, within these structures that, as bad as, you know, they are sometimes, you know, the only thing we have to work with. And I always tell people, you know, I have, you know, radical views, I do, but at the end of the day, when I got into politics, you know, it's because, you know, my cousin that I started this story with, he's in prison now for 8 years. So I would love to see a revolution happen, but I want to see him released tomorrow. You know, I want to see justice for Breonna Taylor tomorrow. You know, I want to see justice for everyone tomorrow. And I think that PAC was the way to go, because we get to work in the structures that already exist, while working with the people in the streets to kind of tear them down and create new structure. Yeah, so the second story was just the trip to the convention. So after the convention, you know, I end up working on 3 different campaigns. I worked for Kathy Glossop for governor. She was a progressive candidate in Iowa running for governor. I worked for the Iowa Democratic Party. I successfully worked to organize a union in Kathy's campaign. We were the first statewide union in Iowa for a campaign. And then I tried to organize a union in the Iowa Democratic Party. And, you know, that's a whole nother story, but I dealt with the pushback. Some of my leaders ended up getting fired. I had to house them temporarily.
Whoa.
And it was really defeating and draining. And I ended up moving to Abby Finkenhauer's campaign for Congress. And we got an incumbent Republican taken out in a pretty red state. So, you know, and that ended up I ended up joining the Iowa Democratic Black Caucus. And there I was able to work with candidates directly and, you know, ask these demands and have these difficult conversations with people like Kamala Harris, you know, who was our next VP, if all goes well. And also people like Cory Booker, you know, because, you know, I think that we must add, you know, fire to these people when it comes to, you know, the issues that, you know, we think that they could be better on. But I also think that while there's people in the streets putting flame to the fire, I think there also needs to be people behind the closed doors putting flame to fire.
Right.
So I remember when we talked to Cory Booker, you know, I asked him about what he was going to do to get the young vote, because though he seemed like a very young vote candidate, he was a very preachy, you know, black vote candidate, you know. So I seen that difference. You know, AOC, she pulls young black people, she pulls young Hispanics, but Cory Booker, he pulls, you know, older black people, and he has, you know, this preachy vibe. But I know the young folks are kind of for state and government being separated, and when creating a strategy, that's a real issue you have to address. So that got me, you know, activated, where, you know, I started to finish my degree, and also I was able to get this tangible experience, where I was able to, you know, be able to actually start an organization, as I saw, you know, the Black Caucus be built from the ground by the chair at that time.
what qualities do you look for in candidates? Like, how do you decide the process?
Yeah, that's a great question. No one's actually asked me that, but we actually have a. So if you go on blmripack.com, so if you go to our website and you go to endorsements, we lay out the whole step. And we do step one, endorsement questionnaire, step two, interview, step three, endorsement decision. Because of the lack of time, we have moved step two, and we just kind of are going off of endorsement applications. So in that endorsement application, I think a candidate said we have like 22 questions, but the main questions at the end, other than logistics, do you consider yourself a progressive? Is our first question. Our second question is, what is your plan for education, and do you believe the educational disparity is interconnected with racial equality? What is your plan for environmental equality? Do you believe it relates to systemic racism? What is your plan for economic inequality? Do you believe the economic disparity is interconnected with racial inequality? So, I mean, if you're getting my gist, affordable housing, election reform, and then we ask them racial inequality, what is your plan for that? So really, we keep it to this this intersectional idea that this movement is about all justice, because if we don't have justice for environmental justice, for economic justice, for election reform, we won't have racial justice. So we challenge candidates to give us an answer where you are understanding that education, for instance, the reason why we have funding inequalities is because of redlining. So if it wasn't for systematic racism, then we wouldn't have the education and justice we have now. And it just happens that redlining, however many years later, started to affect white kids, because once they desegregated, though segregation didn't change tremendously, you still have your select few of white kids that are poor. And that's how this racial issue has turned into a issue of class, because all these issues are interconnected. So when you affect education and you affect environmental, it all comes back around. So that's why we see in the waste plants and Rhode Island, I think I heard, this might be incorrect, but I think I heard 80% of them are located in communities of color.
Dang.
Right. So a lot of these things, we have to remember that the system was built this way. We have to dismantle the foundation before we take down the house. You know what I mean? Because if we built a new house on the same foundation, we'll end up at the same problems.
So if they're in Rhode Island, they should be looking at the website. But if they're outside of Rhode Island, like if they want to be like allies, what qualities should they be looking for in their candidates, and how should they figure that out?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that is really important that we realize, because in America, it's very easy to forget that the Black suffrage is a global suffrage. Indigenous and Black people and people of color around the entire globe have been exploited for their resources and for their goods. And I think that the be all is making sure we pick candidates that are conscious of that, because issues change, people's feelings change. Candidates will change over the rising of the masses, and we have to remember that we are not electing saviors. We have to be our own saviors, as AOC says.
Right.
We have to hold these people accountable. So you want to make sure you pick a candidate with a conscience, with an understanding of the systemic problems in your community. And I say to actually dig into the systemic problems in your community. In Rhode Island, a systemic problem that we have is Brown University. What is the history behind Brown? I surely support having an Ivy League college in our community. I surely support the professors, the students, but I want them all, along with the rest of the community, to understand the history. And the history is that, the Brown brothers used to have arguments in front of their house, and they used to argue whether they wanted to take the route of slavery or, they wanted to take the route, another route. And I know that, one brother, I'm pretty sure it was the brother who actually formed Brown, wanted to take the route of slavery. And he did, I think, about 3 trips where they brought back slaves. And the other brother, it wasn't that he was opposed to the humanitarian aspects, which, some people argue. But, from my knowledge, it was that he opposed of the economic benefits. He said, we did 3 trips and we failed. Let's move on to something else. So one brother started charter school, and then the brother who was for slavery, I believe, started Brown. And, we have to understand that when that deep amount of, systemic racism stems from that institution now has a responsibility to play a role in dismantling it, right? So when the wealth of the community is coming from that institution so many years later, it is up to that institution to take that accountability and responsibility. So I think that Rhode Island's a beautiful place because the people here are very knowledgeable. The thing is, Rhode Island, I think, it's a very special place because the people of Rhode Island aren't dumb, and the people of the world aren't dumb, but specifically the people of Rhode Island, they know what's going on, and it's a small community, so word travels fast. So all it takes is a few people to kind of become enlightened, and now you have a mass movement forming. And I just say that because a lot of times people believe that I'm one person, I can't make a difference. But when I drove out to Kingston in rural Rhode Island, I saw about 6 people out there with signs combating racism. And so I say, stand up, organize, and become educated and enlightened on how your local community played a role in this global suffrage of indigenous people.
You mentioned 2 words, foundation and then justice. So these are kind of duh questions, but sometimes I feel like you can get some really good answers out of duh questions, so I'm going to ask them anyway.
So absolutely.
Yeah.
It's never a dumb question.
What are the foundations of BLM? Why does BLM exist? And why, should I, as a white American, what should I be concerned about? Why does this tie in with me?
Yeah, so the foundation of BLM from, the founder of the national organization, but I think it's a different meaning to everybody. For me, my foundation of BLM is that my cousin's life matters. Is that, he was in a socioeconomic situation that led him to follow the only way he knew to acquire capital. And, I think that's, has a connection to systemic structures and barriers that, America has been built on. But I think the national meaning, so I think that's something for everyone to explore, what it means to them personally. But I think the national, foundation is this intersectional idea that, all social issues are interconnected, and that, LGBT Black Lives Matter, trans Black Lives Matter, Black children matter. And so when I think of that, I think of, my time in Chicago. I would see LGBT Black people brutally abused. And you want to ask yourself, why is that? And I can tell you, growing up in a Black family, Black people are taught to be, strong as steel, because if you're not, you won't make it, because, you already have this and this and this against you. So if you're not able to disregard feelings, if you're not able to understand that you aren't allowed to be a child, you're not thinking about having fun. You're thinking about, if I get pulled over, will I die? Right? You're thinking about, so I think that kind of, creates or adds to, this toxic masculinity that, the patriarchy, the male patriarchy has instilled in all of us. But I think amplifies in the Black community. And that's why, LGBT Black women, right, face some of the worst, because they face what a white woman would face, they face what an LGBT white person would face, and they face what a Black person would face. So I think that for me, it's like, if you're any type of marginalized group, which won't be, everyone, cisgender white males, I think that your job is to go out there and experience and hear and listen, because you will never be able to, and even while listening, you'll never be able to understand, but you'll be able to, relate and empathize. And so I think that for LGBT white people, for white women, we have to let them know that the same hate that they face is the same hate we face, and there's some familiarity between it. And you need to tell your brother, your cousin, your sister that, hey, this same hate that I went through in my transition, this same hate that I went through, when I came out the closet, this same hate that I went through, right, when I spoke up, when I said, I'm an outspoken woman, and women aren't supposed to be outspoken in societal norms that we've created, that's the same hate. But the difference is that hate was consistent.
In a recent sit-in for George Floyd, you had said that we need justice in every arena and aspect of our lives, which is what you were kind of talking about in that last segment. So what do you mean by this, and what is justice and what is injustice?
Yeah, so that's a hard question. What is injustice? What is justice? I took a class that was I think it was power, justice, and something. But basically, justice is really, still in creation. I don't think, we can really define justice until we encapsulate it. I think that a lot of places have attempted to have their own type of justice. At one point, justice, slavery was justice, to some people. At one point, arranged marriage was justice. So I think that that's a society question, and it can mean a different thing in every different society. And that's why I think that, we have to realize that progressivism relies on the idea of changing minds, right? Because is it really justice if, if the masses aren't convinced? And that's a tough question, because, that's when, because right now we kind of, it's kind of like, is justice what the majority of people believe? Because it can sometimes be miscued as that. But I think justice is tied in on, what's right and what's wrong. And I think that that's tied in with knowledge, but also emotional knowledge, emotional intelligence, being able to understand what might not seem wrong to me, might be wrong to you. And, so I think that we can start off by addressing the things that are clear.
Right.
And I think that clearly, punishment has not worked over rehabilitation. So I would say rehabilitation is justice. The idea that everything that we do in reaction to an event or circumstance has to be built around how can we make it so this doesn't happen again. And I think that that's a bit of intelligence. Obviously, if you're going to spend money to address an issue, you want to not have to spend that money again.
Right.
So then we go into emotional intelligence. And I think that that's saying, okay, let's understand the problem. So punishment, if you have emotional intelligence, you would say, okay, this is wrong that a drug addict is facing punishment for, their use of drugs, and that comes with empathy. And though, they're not going to, enjoy rehab either, right? You still know that that's right for them, and that's helping them,
Right, right.
and it creates hope. You believe that they have a chance. So I think that we have to tie in data, statistics, and use quantifying means of determining what's right for our community and what's wrong for our community. But I think we also have to remember that we need emotional intelligence, because no matter how intelligent or no matter how a study might seem, that still doesn't jurisdict that gut feeling when we know what's right and what's wrong.
Right.
So it's a tricky water, a murky water to swim through. I took a whole class over it. Justice, freedom, and power. That's what it was. Justice, freedom,
Wow.
justice, freedom, and power. And we still never got, at the end of the class, we still never got to the meaning of justice. And that left me to believe that the meaning of justice is different from everyone. Some people in the class completely disagreed with how the professor viewed justice, and how their peer viewed justice. They had their own definition of justice. My definition of justice is rehabilitation over punishment, but that's a personal thing, right? Because that goes back to the story I talked about with my cousin. And when I see justice, I'm thinking of him. I'm thinking of what is the opportunity he could have been provided, what is the opportunity that he lacked, and I think about the situation I was in. How was I given a different version of justice than what he was given, and how did that impact me? So it's different for everyone, just like what BLM means, because what BLM means to a LGBT Black person is totally different than what it means to me. And what they go through, I could never imagine. I can never, because I've seen it firsthand, but I couldn't imagine, when I dealt with racism and when I felt alienated, I was able to go to my cousins and feel relief and familiarity. And, I couldn't imagine being an LGBT Black person and you go to your family for that same type of relief, because, you're facing white supremacy and you're facing bullying for your skin color at school. But then you get, another side of, prejudice because of your sexual orientation. And that's something I could never imagine, because I was able to go back to my family and get that. So it's really different for everyone, but I think it's really about what's right and what's wrong, and knowing, the data, the statistics, and then also having that emotional intelligence alongside that too.
That's really cool. I had never thought of justice being like an abstract idea, but it clearly is after.
That's exactly how my professor would rephrase this. It's this abstract,
right,
conditioning.
What is 2020 justice?
Okay, so 2020 justice, I think, is the start to the revolution. And I think, there's always a preliminary, problem. Like they say that Trump is a symptom of the problem. And I believe that's very so. So I'll put it like this then. 2020 justice is the symptom of, what justice has been. And, that becomes, and my professor always said, injustice cannot create justice. So, when I think about that, I personally do not believe in, violence or anything that has stemmed from this movement, as violence, has stemmed from every movement and every facet in life, right? You talk about, the few percent of the people that got hurt, and I'm not even talking about looting or burning buildings down. I'm talking about like actually hurting human beings, because that's injustice. I don't believe that. The problem is that justice has been tied to property. Justice has been tied to capital, right? And now we are facing the symptom of that. Then the 2020 justice is saying no, justice should be tied to human beings.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's the simple overlying justice that we are getting from this, because though we aren't seeing qualified immunity, become banned on a federal level, though we are seeing, we're seeing a lot of, murals. We're seeing a lot of Black Lives Matter streets, right? But I think that we're getting a common agenda that justice is about humans, not property. And I think that
Right.
that's something that has been created in reaction to the responses. I think that the movement wasn't about that. I think that it was really about George Floyd. It was really about, the system of policing, and it's turned into an example and in the magnification of why this system is so, terrible. And I always tell people, I think the biggest problem with the system is it's reactionary, not proactive. When a business went, wow, looters are coming, what did they do? They put up boards. They boarded everything up. When a police says, okay, looters are coming, what do? They stand in front of the business with a gun. And that's reactionary versus proactive. But I think that the reactionary nature of this system has led people to say, wow, they care more about these buildings. They care more about, this state house. They care more about this than they do about our lives. And I think that has, totally transformed the meaning of justice in 2020. And we're moving towards, a mass of people that really are saying, no, property isn't more important than human beings.
You seem like a very busy person. Do you get a chance to watch SNL or Dave Chappelle or anything like that?
So I do watch Dave Chappelle. I watch Netflix and Hulu.
Oh, nice.
I watch clips of SNL, but like really, I watch. I indulge in my, I watch Avatar. I'm
Oh,
watching The
nice.
Legend of Korra right now. I love Parks and Rec, but I haven't had cable in a long time. So I do wish I got the news more and got SNL more. Um, yeah.
uh yeah, no, I think I'm with you. I don't have time to watch like the full episodes, but I do watch the clips on my YouTube on my phone. Um
Right.
so one was, I've been thinking a lot, of course, because it's 2020, and I'm furloughed right now from work, so I have nothing to do except think. So there was this skit, you might have seen it. It was with Dave Chappelle and SNL. It
Mhm.
was the 2016 election, and the skit took place after Trump was elected. So you knew the punchline was Trump was elected. So Dave Chappelle's sitting in the room with like four white people, and they're like, "Oh, I really think Hillary's got it." Blah 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 blah. And Dave Chappelle's there like, I don't know, you guys. Like, kind of like Dave Chappelle knew America the way it was, and then these four
Yeah.
white people were like, "No, America's not like that. We're going for Hillary." So, uh, so it's this really like Colin Kaepernick feel where like he was kneeling that whole time, and everybody was like, "What are you doing? Stop kneeling!" And then all of a sudden, it's like, "Oh my God, can we please just go back to you
Right.
kneeling?" So, as a white person, there's a huge difference for me between like 2015 and 2020, and it's
Right.
like 2015, I'm like, oh, there's like a problem, but we're getting there. And then 2020 is like, no, there's a huge problem. We haven't gotten
Mhm.
anywhere. So is there something different for you between 2015 and 2020, or any kind of response you would have to what I just presented?
Yeah. So in 2015, I remember after the election, my brother hit me up and he's like, "This is really how they feel." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And he was like, "White people, America." And that resonated with me. I felt that like it was like, you're right. Like America, put a man in office because who had said racist comments, whether all these people are racist or not, racism wasn't a deal breaker for them. And I think that put things in perspective for a lot of people, because for me, it told me that I believe that we have to, mobilize and organize people who have been disengaged, because it's almost like that's what Trump did, but with these, what he calls the silent majority, these basically racists, and so it's the thing is, I also have taken a lot of political science classes, and the biggest lesson that I learned is that party identification is as solidified in a lot of humans, a lot of people, as much as religion. So while there is a chunk of people that threw this race in Trump's favor that were racist, there's also a chunk of people who simply voted because they vote Republican every year. And we know though that, in my opinion, the racists are what was the winning delegates. So I believe we have to organize it and mobilize in a different way than we previously have. Because if we're not able to bring out, in the same way he brought out those racists, if we're not able to bring out the people who support our causes that have been silent, that haven't been participating, and it's a large amount. I think like what, 36, 40% of people don't vote. Then I believe that we are able to tilt things in our favor. But at the end of the day, we also have structural barriers in our voting system. We have voter suppression. We have, the electoral college. We have, Puerto Rico is in a state. Washington, D.C. is in a state. California, maybe should be broken up, So I believe that it's not about just overturning and seeing a new leaf, but we have to change the structural barriers that, far advantage, the racists who haven't been involved versus, the people of color who might not have ID who have not been involved.
Right.
So that was the awakening call for me. And I read a book called by David Ferris, It's Time to Fight Dirty. And I highly recommend it because he enlightened me to this. And he really broke it down about how, some candidates and places that went Obama to Trump, they weren't able to connect the social program of the Affordable Care Act to Obama, and the fact that they were getting the health care from Obama. And, we saw that in statistics when you look at the amount of people that support the Obamacare versus the Affordable Care Act in those Obama to Trump swing states. So for me, it's about understanding the political, field and knowing that, we have to play a different game. Trump introduced a different, it's a whole different sport now.
Yeah.
Politics is, we went from, baseball to football.
Right.
And we have to adjust. So I think that most importantly, what Trump has done and changed is the innovation that we'll see going into politics, the amount and, Cambridge Analytica and all the different things that are going on, and the amount of people that will run. I think people like Mayor Pete maybe wouldn't have ran if Trump didn't, come out of nowhere. They kind of realized that, hey, if Trump can do it, anybody can kind of pull this off. So I think we're in a whole different sphere, in 2016, Bernie's movement, when I became a national delegate, it really activated me, but it didn't just activate me. It activated AOC, it activated Ilhan, it activated Ayanna Pressley, and so I think that we are building, kind of similar to what Newt Gingrich did in 1994 when he built the Freedom Caucus for the Republicans. We are building a progressive caucus that is to be reckoned with. And Trump did that for us, that's the reality. Trump did that for us, put us on this good fight like never before. And, whether that's Trump era ends with Biden or whether it continues, I think that what he has done for the progressive movement is just a glimpse of what's to come.
I think so too. Yeah, no, I think so too. It'll be exciting to be like 10 years from now and be like, oh, let's see. But here we are now. But one thing I thought you said was really interesting was like there was just a misunderstanding, and it might have been fueled by hate, but like there was just that misunderstanding between like Obamacare and the Affordable Care Act. And like there was that misunderstanding. It was the same thing, of course, as you know.
Right.
So like what do you think is like misunderstood by BLM, and what do you think like people who are on ALM, like if they could be persuaded into like BLM, what are they misunderstanding? What are they not getting?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. So I think what is misunderstood in Black Lives Matter is that people think Black Lives Matter means Black lives only matter. Only Black Lives Matter. That's what is kind of, is the narrative, for this manipulation of the movement. And I think all lives matter is inherently a protest to our protest. Like, for example, a lot of people in Iowa, to start off, I have a friend whose dad I call, and I'll say his name because he has the most, like, if it was a Karen, like he's definitely he's Chad. You know what I mean? Chad is definitely the male Karen. And, I have a really good relationship with Chad, and Chad has allowed me to be able to have hope that these people will be able to be convinced. But Chad told me I call him the blueprint for the Trump supporter. Like that's what I refer to Chad as. And we always talk politics every time I see him. And he was supporting Trump, before Trump even officially announced his run. And he went from All Lives Matter to Black Lives Matter after he saw the post. When Boston Marathon happened, people were saying Boston strong, but they weren't saying all cities matter. And he hit me up and he's like, Corey, I realized how racist and awful it was that, I've been saying all lives matter since 2014. And he's like, I don't know how it took a meme for me to realize this. And, he was very empathetic and he was very understanding, but, it's that simple. And right now I was dealing with, I don't know if you heard about the Iowa Directo, but, they're calling it a hurricane on land. So there was a storm, and basically, I think it was only like 20, 30 minutes. This storm basically had 100 miles per hour winds that basically just blew straight, and it destroyed buildings.
What? No, I did not hear about this. That's
no
crazy.
one's talking about it. No one's talking about it. And they've been asking. Trump just approved FEMA aid to them, and basically, I'm seeing a lot of people say, are you going to say all states matter now? But everyone's begging for national press. So I hope it doesn't take everybody else as long as it took Chad, 6 years. But I do think that, people have been genuinely manipulated into this all lives matter. I don't even dare to call it a movement, when in reality, it's really just a protest to our protests. It's like it's like a way to silence us. It's like, they're screaming over us. And that in itself is, genuinely hurtful. As a person of color, it's exhausting, it's draining. And as someone who signed up, to dedicate my entire life to fighting for social justice and dedicate my studies to fighting for social justice, I find myself, responding to people highly intelligently with paragraphs and facts. But, the all life matter thing is just, I got to a point where I was just like, it's just so like exhausting and draining to explain to people. And thank God for the meme era where we could just drop a meme.
I know.
When we feel exhausted and drained. But that's what I would say, if you feel like, you've been combating this too much, you've been having these conversations with your family and they're just not getting it, the all life matter thing, but you don't want to, slow down, but you feel exhausted and drained, I would say, drop some memes. Like, make sure it's correct, of course, but don't feel less intelligent because you didn't put a well wrote out response. I think, like, it's okay to drop a meme and, say, you weren't saying, all cities matter then.
Yeah. Is there anything that I did not cover or anything?
I was just gonna say, like, how people can get involved.
Yeah.
So we're gonna be creating a Facebook group that we'll be getting people involved in. So if you go to our website and sign up for our mailing list, you will eventually get that link to that group. In that group, and also through our mailing list, we will be inviting people to Zoom once a week, where we will be, having casual conversation, but closing out with 20 minutes of action. So anybody's welcome to that, in any place. I think that, if we had some people from Italy show up, that'd be awesome to kind of,
yeah,
to build a whole Zoom on, what is the different challenges you face and advice on how people should get organized there. Because again, the Black suffrage is a global suffrage, and we cannot forget that. Because, even myself as an American, it's so hard to like bring ourselves out of our perspective. When you're in Europe, you're miles away from other states and other countries, and much different cultures. You might drive 6 or 8 hours in the Africa continent and go through 3 or 4 different dialects, or 2 or 3 different languages. So we are in a bubble almost, and I would love to, pop that bubble. And we would love to expand, and empower other people to, take the same steps that we took in their local area. I really have been pondering on the idea of creating like BLM coalitions, where maybe we get all the BLMs in New England, that's in some meetings, and we talk about, further steps and how we can all work together. So if you go on blmripac.com, sign up for the mailing list, donate, leave a comment, So other than that, yeah, that's about it. I really, a big thing that I wanted to do when forming this organization was groom candidates. I think that, it's not that I think. So I took a women in politics class. I'm going to be in college for my entire life because it makes me so sorry. Because, these things, I'm so passionate about them. When I learn about them, some things just like I retain them and it resonates. So when I took this women in politics class, we had an academic journal about intersectionalism, and it talked about how women of color and LGBT women of color are most likely to have upsets and to actually win. It's not tremendously, but they're actually more likely to beat a white male. So then it talks about that, and it says because, women of color, LGBT women, they're more likely, and even white women, they're more likely to use innovative ways to get elected. So when I think about that, I think of AOC and how she notched her win number, and how she hit the projects to get herself elected. So when I bring that back to now, I think the biggest thing we ask ourselves, why isn't there more women elected then? And then it answered, and so in this academic journal, it answered that, and it said it's because of recruitment. Women and women of color and LGBT women are less likely to be recruited. And on top of that, men are more likely to believe that they are more qualified, or not more qualified, but qualified to run. And women are more likely to believe that they're less qualified when they may be. So with that being said, run. Like, we have to, put ourselves in perspective when we're thinking decisions like that. And it's easy to see things only from your perspective, but we have to put ourselves in perspective to the other people who are represented in this field, who are running, and who you're, going up against. Because a big thing we want to do is encourage women of color and LGBT women of color to run and groom them to run and put them in position and connect them with the right people.
Yeah, okay. And then the last question I just had, it was kind of like, I kind of like to do like a little role play, if that's all right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sometimes I love imitating Ben Shapiro speak, and I just like present it to people. So, okay, so I'll just role play. I'll say, Corey, I don't know what you want from me. I'm a cis straight male. Everybody hates me now. I don't see color. I don't hate you. I don't know what your problem is. What's the problem? Why does everybody hate me? Da da da.
Yeah, I would say, Ben, you are a product of your ancestors, as well as I am. So that means that I'm a product of a slave. And as a product of our ancestors, we have to be accountable for the past and the present and reconciliation going forward. So no for personal offense to you, but we can't change history. We can only change the future.
And then I'll just push you one more. I'll say, I don't know what you're talking about. I grew up poor. I work 60 hours a week. I'm struggling just as much as you are.
Yeah, and I'd say, racism has resulted into classism, and that's the reason why you should be a part of this movement, is because the reason why, we see white communities facing the same type of disenfranchising as we see black communities is because of redlining, and because of, home programs that were not given to black communities. And this has further created wealth inequality.
You're the best.